What's happening? Benton here. Good to see the people posting in the live chat before the broadcast went live. What's up, and Austin Murphy. Austin Murphy says it was hard to even look at the moon tonight. It was so bright. Nothing about the moon seems anything like we were brainwashed to believe in our government indoctrination camps. Indeed, sir, I could not agree more. Uh, and there's at times I've noticed that I can see the sun and the moon simultaneously, big as shit. Uh, you know, so how could the light coming from the moon possibly be the reflected light of the sun, and I'm able to see both at the same time? I mean, it seems obvious to me at this point that the moon is indeed a luminary. By the way, Zetetic Warrior is live. Uh, I have little to no desire to go live at the same time as other content creators. However, this is just about the only time I can do this broadcast. So would have gone live much earlier, but I had things to do since I'm back to work. What's up, Music Holds a Secret? Good to see you. And also, what's up to What's Up? What's happening, Rob, Mr. Piano Man? And I was brought up by Z was checking in with the live chat. Zetetic Warrior, the channel at Zetetic Warrior 2139. And apparently Svetlana is running around calling me a reptile, which I think is funny. And then I understand that Z brought that up, tongue in cheek, obviously, but and bear with me. I'm getting on the road here, leaving the Walmart where I've been doing my shopping. And I had ordered this butane stove from Amazon, and it worked great, and I really enjoyed it. But it has a lot smaller footprint than the Coleman butane stove sold at Walmart. But unfortunately, this the one I had got on Amazon. When you push down on the handle, to seat the butane cartridge, it's gotten to where it doesn't line up correctly, and the butane leaks out. And in fact, I burned all the hair off both of my hands the other day as a result. So just dropped $30 on the tried and true Coleman from Walmart. And I had one in the past, and I actually left it in Fort Worth at the motel. I didn't think I needed it. Oh well, such is life. Well, are we gonna go here? Oh, helps if I release the trailer brake. So, how is everybody? What is it, Sunday morning? Yeah, exactly. Shout out to Svetlana and the Reptilian. Well, if anybody remembers, we had an active panel, and the topic of discussion was psychedelics, and I believe DMT in particular. So Svetlana joined the panel for the first time on this channel. And bear with me while I try to leave the Walmart here. The way this thing's laid out. Plenty of room for me to get out, but try to manage the traffic. One moment. I hope somebody's coming because I can't see them. And also these supplements I'm picking up at the Amazon locker later today. I was in such a rush to order the supplements so that they would arrive today, when I'll be able to retrieve them. I ordered two of the same item, and then that later realized that they have a cheaper price on a 2-pack. But so Amazon allowed me to pay $11 too much. Why do they even do that? And I understand like it's probably a different SKU in their system or whatever. But it still seems bizarre that they just allow me to pay $11 too much. I was in such a rush to get the order made that it wasn't until later that I realized what had happened. Yeah, Svetlana had joined the panel, and then she just started talking, which is, I guess, okay. I mean, I'm always a little confused when someone new joins the panel and just in no way acknowledges the other panelists and the host. To me, that just seems like bad manners. Maybe I was raised differently. I don't know. So she talked for about 5 minutes, and then uh, she seemed to expect to just be able to continue to talk. So eventually, I just muted her, right? And I think she kept talking. Maybe this is what made her mad. I think perhaps she just kept talking and was unaware that she had been muted. Maybe that was the issue. But then I think in the live chat, started calling me a reptile for the crime of not allowing her to dominate the broadcast. And she has to have a personality disorder. To me, that's someone with a personality disorder that would join a broadcast and be expected and believe that they should be allowed to just talk for like 20 minutes. And you know how time works. This is not like she talked for 2 minutes and it felt like 5 minutes. No, I mean, she talked for 5 straight minutes, maybe longer. I don't really know who Svetlana is, Gary. I'm honestly not sure. Couldn't tell you. What's up, Fire Drake? And I'm not trying to take away from what Z's doing. So if anybody wants to check Z out, please do. Again, realistically, this is the only time I can go live. And it looks like I've paid for all this hotspot data that I'm not even going to be able to use. I've still got like 125 gigs left on my hotspot out of 150. And I think I'm like halfway through the period. I don't know. I might go live from my computer just to try to eat up some of that data. Yeah, Christos was on the panel at that time. And if there's a discussion of psychedelics and DMT, you can expect Christos to be involved, certainly. And he was. What's up, Sly Shy? Good to see you. And I don't know how much I have to talk about, really. But since Z brought me up, and I know some of what he's talking about is always tongue in cheek. How's my audio, by the way? I'm on this new set of headphones with the built-in mic, so I don't know how this sounds compared to the earbuds. Let me know how we're sounding quickly. And talking about I guess my presentment and more being revealed about my persona as time goes on. The layers of an onion type of thing with somebody's personality. That is my favorite topic, of course, me, right? Actually, give me a moment. I think I'm going to switch back to the earbuds with these headphones on. I can't hear my voice sounds weird. Weird to me. Give me just a moment. All right, mic check, mic check. Yeah, I realized that, Sly Shy, and I was thinking about that. Yeah, 4 devices. Uh, Again, I would have preferred to go live earlier, but I have so many things to do in my morning routine with preparing my food that it's just realistically not possible. And actually, I probably could have gone live like an hour before Z went live. How, except for this is the only time I'm able to go do my grocery shopping. So I just got done doing my grocery shopping at Walmart. Oh, good, thank you. Good deal. So now I know not to try to use the headphone, the over the ear headphones. Good deal. And the last thing I wanted to do was post in Z's live chat, "Hey, I'm about to go live," but I would like to have some kind of way to contact Z. You know, it's almost like there should be some kind of creator chat. Some sort of app or site, or even maybe just an email list where just the live streamers could communicate with one another. Because I would have liked to have been able to give him a heads up. Hey, I'm about to go live, and just as an FYI, and hey, I'm not trying to compete. Unfortunately, this is literally the only time I can do it, most likely. Although my energy levels have been better I'm not quite as exhausted later in the day as I have been. My energy levels increased quite a bit, so I don't know. Maybe I will. Maybe I will be able to go later in the evening. We will see. That's right. Trying to keep up with the street. Well, and I don't think there's going to be too much to this one. I'm just more or less rambling. I've noticed that the replay numbers are not that many views on the replays anymore. Not sure what's up with that. There's some folks that used to post in my comments that I don't see much of. I haven't seen Provo Kid around much, and nor have I been seeing JFK Beta. Although he hasn't been showing up in my feed either for his videos. So maybe he's off doing other things, perhaps. I don't know. Yep. Always good to see Miss Sly Shy around. I saw EBT dropped a video with I'm in the thumbnail. I found that was pretty interesting. Shout out to me, right? I am pretty memeable, and I do end up functioning as something of a mascot, or at least my visage does. But I hope everybody got to check out that moon. I'm in Indiana, I guess Eastern Indiana. I'm almost to Indianapolis now, I believe. But yeah, that moon was something else. I know that's not a very good picture of it. That's my phone. That phone camera is not good at all. Oh, is that what it is? Good to see you, Roy. Yeah, Roy emailed me a link to a video, um, which I do plan to check out, Roy. Yeah. Oh, Provo was in his daddy's chat. Yeah, the Thorpe stuff is, I don't know, man. I haven't watched a single second of Thorpe content on any of their channels. I've only ever seen them like on Chalk Body or EBT or other places. I've never actually. It's just not for me, right? Not my thing. I don't. I don't really understand what the allure is. There's got to be something there, I would imagine. I can tell you the driving session yesterday was not much fun. All the day trippers or the weekenders, all the people on road trips, they are the most annoying drivers possible. My, really the only thing, since I'm speed limited and I can't get away from them by increasing my speed, I just end up going way below the speed limit, so that they will get away from me. Super annoying. For like hours at a time, it'll be every single car that catches up to me tries to just stay right behind my trailer. It's like, what are you people doing? So, like, if I'm going 60 and they catch up to me, they'll just ride back there. But if I speed up to 71, they just match my speed the whole way. But then if I slow down to like 55, they will go around. Like I have to pick the fastest speed I can go so that the people will actually pass me. So for some reason, you can just tell they're on road trips. They're not in the area in which they live. Something about those people are that they're just the worst drivers for whatever reason, or most annoying, I should say. Oh yeah, 71 miles an hour, Gary. Yeah, yeah, 71. 75 is the fastest truck I've driven. Yeah, that's for a company driver. That's about as fast as you'll ever see. Is about 75. A lot of companies are like 65, 68. But yeah, 71. What's up, Capricorny? Good to see you. Now the main thing today is what time is Amazon going to deliver my package? Because yesterday most of the order got delivered. Then there's two more items showing up today, because that Amazon locker I think is it's about 2 hours, actually 3 hours it looks like, away from where I'm ending the day. So I may end up having to stop and wait at the truck stop where the Amazon locker is, perhaps. Well, it's not out for delivery yet, Flash Eye. So there's nothing to track at this point. But once it goes out for delivery, then at least I know at least maybe it will probably be delivered today. I found with Amazon, depending on the area in which one is, that oftentimes the shipments arrive a day late with the Amazon Prime deliveries. Yeah, actually, what's up? He actually showed up in the live chat over here. Believe it or not, that's Alex. I found his channel years ago, before he blew up, and I don't watch him anymore just because I can't deal with the clickbait. So actually, I think last time his video showed up in my channel, in my feed, I think I actually did don't recommend channel. But yeah, I like what he's doing. I just can't, and I understand YouTube is a clickbait platform, and I understand why he does clickbait, but I can't deal with the clickbait. But yeah, I subscribed when he first started having subscriptions. I actually joined his channel membership, and I guess he saw that I joined. I was probably one of the first ones to join, and he actually showed up in one of my early morning live streams at some point. Kind of funny. Wish I knew which one that was. Yeah, he seems like a good dude. Puts in a lot of work, certainly. Well, and he started actually I believe the whole time he drove a truck, he was, drove those big moving vans, the 18-wheeler where they move like multiple families at a time. They call them bed buggers in the trucking world, but that's some hard ass work. So, and I know he made bank doing that. Well, yeah, the Amazon, they're just unreliable. What is what I found, but in certain areas it's not as bad. So this particular Amazon locker in Illinois, I've used it a lot of times, and I've never had a problem with that. But I know in Fort Worth it was terrible. It was frequently late packages. And then I had a mini PC I had ordered got stolen out of Fort Worth. Oh yeah, definitely. It's just the thing to realize what's up is like whatever his title is, if it has anything to do with the actual truck driving industry, it's just not true. Like whatever he's whatever he's sensational title he picks, if you actually look into it, it's very far from reality. It's which is, again, YouTube's a clickbait platform, so I understand why he does what he does, but it's just for somebody who's not in trucking, I could see them falling for it. I'll go look at his channel right now, and I'll tell you what I mean. Probably the first video on his channel will be something I'll just be like, well, that's not true at all. So let me go over there. It's like this breaking news: new law forces 100 owner-operator truck drivers out of business. Like, I don't know what that is exactly, but I guarantee you, if you look into it, that did not happen. It's like that sort of thing. Bullshit clickbait. But so somebody who doesn't know trucking or doesn't know to look into it will be running around telling their friends, "Can you believe it? There's new laws that force these 100 owner operators out of business." But it's like, if you look into it, that's not going to be what happened at all. Well, good, good. Well, I remember because like California, they forced this compliance with the big rigs have to meet certain emission standards. So all the old equipment, it cannot operate in California. But like other states, a big rig can still use like a pre-emissions engine, right? They call them glider kits or just older trucks. So you had like this one guy is saying that he inherited like he was a guy, I don't know, probably in his 30s. He had inherited his trucks like from his dad or whatever. But then, like, if you say, well, he's being forced out of business, it's like, well, he could obviously, if he wanted to, like, why can't he just buy new equipment? Or why can't he leave California? It's like, yeah, it sucks that the laws are changing, but like, does this person really just have a God-given right to operate old equipment that doesn't meet certain emission standards? Now, my thing is like, move the fuck out of California. But, and I understand that some people are like, look, I'm from here. Why should I have to leave? It's like, well, no, you don't have to leave, but, the writing's on the wall. That ain't America. As bad as it is in other states, like, just imagine trying to be a truck driver in California, trying to own a truck driving business in California. Like what I'm doing, 1099 for my, I'm considered a contractor, even though I'm a company driver. They're doing it because it's cheaper for them to employ me, right? And I prefer it because I'm going to figure out how to not pay any income tax. I'm probably going to do what Highly Suspect did and do the whole American State National thing, but I need to study up on it more. What's up, Bazookov? Good to see you. But yeah, like California, they don't allow that at all now. They changed the law like 2 years ago. No more contractor truck drivers. They just got rid of it. State law, it's gone. So they got their own thing. And actually, California, I'm pretty sure they've already forced like all the trucks coming in and out of the ports have to be electric. I believe that's already the case. So what's going to end up happening is California is going to go all electric for big rigs very soon, statewide, and then like they will have some exceptions. So like, these like the refrigerated trucks, maybe will be able to come in and out of California, but probably they're just shifted all to Phoenix. So like the guys who are pulling reefer coming in and out of California will probably that'll all shift to Phoenix. And in fact, they're building gigantic warehouses all over Phoenix. So much so that I saw the New York Times did a news piece on it. So California's going to go all electric. And people can shake their heads and say, well, they catch on fire and this happens and that happens. No, they're going to do it, come what may. It's within 10 years, it'll effectively be all electric big rigs in the state of California. There'll be some exceptions, but not many. Like, they're going to do it. Same thing with all this emissions bullshit for cars. That all started in California. And then it spread nationwide for the most part, although God bless Arkansas, we don't have any of that bullshit. We don't even have inspections. One of the reasons I love my home state. Well, yeah, that's mentally ill people. What's up? I mean, yeah, there's always mentally ill people, who take up some cause, and that's the over socialization that Kaczynski wrote about. The Unabomber. That's the I think I've read that on the broadcast here from the Unabomber Manifesto. Industrial Society and its future, but those people have these emotional disturbances, and then they find these causes to take up so that they can, it's a way to cope with their these emotional problems that these people have. Well, regardless of what happens, the reality is California, it's able to do what it wants to do at that level. I would say it's already, unless somebody has a ton of money or is literally homeless, like why would anybody live in California? Like I don't understand it. I'm sure it's awesome for like independently wealthy people. I'm sure it's great. And then if somebody's literally living outside with nothing, a homeless person in areas of California could just live out of the garbage that the rich people throw away, like literally. And then the weather's nice in most of the state. But for the people in the middle, what's the point of even trying to live in California? I don't understand it. It's expensive enough in these bullshit states like Arkansas. Why would anybody even attempt to live in California? And I understand people are like, hey, my family's here, we're from here, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it is wonderful and awesome in certain regards, but at a certain point, it's like, we got to get the fuck out of here. And there is like a reverse dust bowl happening to some extent, because there are, It's not a lot, but there are numbers of people leaving California for places like Oklahoma, Kansas, and Arkansas. It's like the reverse Dust Bowl. Grapes of Wrath. You know, Grapes of Wrath 2.0, but like inverted. Yeah. Well, if you're on a phone, slow boy, I've noticed sometimes the YouTube app on a phone, the audio just stops working, and I have to reboot the whole phone. Why that is, I don't know, but it does seem to happen. It does seem to happen on occasion. Good to see you, Casey. Holla. Oh, there you go. Bazukov is building a manufacturing plant for batteries. Yeah, batteries and solar obviously is a big deal now. Uh, electric vehicles obviously, and the whole thing. So, oh, okay, the Bluetooth. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, and we know it all comes back to control, right? I mean, obviously, like California, I'm pretty sure haven't they already phased out, like gas stoves, and that's going to end up being nationwide. Increasingly, I think you're going to see large cities are just they're not going to allow gas stoves in people's homes anymore, and then that's a further control, through the electric grid. Although the solar component, I wonder how that works. Presumably people could have their own solar. But although I can tell you this, even from running this, uh, portable crock pot, the slow cooker, just a little bit of power that thing draws, it drains these batteries in this truck pretty quick. Because it still gets kind of chilly at night depending on where I'm at. So if I wake up in the middle of the night and turn the truck off, and then the APU will kick on whenever the batteries get down to a certain level, so that the truck will still start. That doesn't run for that doesn't drain the battery for very long before I hear the APU kick on. Well, I would say that in the current manifestation, they have their uses. Uh, I think in certain instances they're useful and desirable to some extent, but not just across the board. It seems insane to me. If somebody's only ever drives around town and they always park their vehicle at their house, and especially if they can, if the electricity doesn't cost that much where they're at, and if you add solar, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If somebody's, commuting to work, and a lot of highway driving, it really doesn't make any sense at all. Gasoline's way more efficient, on the highway. That's why a Prius gets better. Prius gets better economy in the city than it does on the highway, whereas it's the opposite for most other vehicles. Well, but everything's. I mean, the entire system's unsustainable. It's like so. I think the whole sustainability thing is a bit of a red herring because, like, what is sustainable? Other than the Earth itself, you know, what actually is sustainable out of what's going on here? It doesn't seem to me like any of it is. That's how I would look at it, me personally. Stay on the road here. just America being so car centric in general. And that's when I talk about that I actually like cities. That's part of me liking cities is I don't have to have a vehicle. Now I've never lived in a large city, but I've been homeless in large cities. Just being able to take the bus, take the light rail, subway, like I find that very desirable. Or being able to reach a lot of different places on foot versus being out in the sticks somewhere. You have to have a vehicle. Just you have to. And I'm just never been a big fan of car dependence. And I grew up that way. Most of my life it was taken for granted that everybody has a car. Whenever I go somewhere, I get in a car and drive there. It's not a desirable way to live, in my view. It's just not. So just even that alone, the fact that we were all more or less born into that. And yeah, there's convenience, of course, but the more I've understood about the realm and the things going on, and the more I've gotten out of these ideas of the rat race, the status quo, and trying to be viewed, success based on what society deigns to be success, and realizing that I get to define that for myself and all of those notions. When I lived for all those years living in the streets with nothing, some of the time I did have a vehicle, but most of the time I did not. And, I did not miss driving at all. And I like to drive. I've always enjoyed driving. So I think I just assumed that I would miss driving if I didn't have a car. Nope, not even a little bit. And there's a lot of headaches that come along with vehicle ownership. Just parking is a big deal. And then, tires, repairs, God forbid, an accident, tickets, keeping if one has a driver's license, keeping that, in good order. Being subject to being pulled over by the popo. And the reality is, if I'm on foot, the cops cannot fuck with me to the level that they can when I'm driving an automobile. They just can't. I'm opening myself up to way more intervention by the jackbooted oppressor thugs if I choose to drive an automobile. That's just reality. Well, I didn't find that to be the case, Gary Baxter. Vegas public transportation. But, I think I did ride that monorail or whatever that is at some point, whatever it is they've got. I can't remember what they call that. Hoop Dream says I'm destined for a 15-minute city. Well, but if you look at this idea of a 15-minute city, that's a proper city is already that. So I think it's interesting. I think it says something about the ways in which Americans have been mind controlled, that the people who identify as Trumpers or MAGA or conservative or family values somehow see that as undesirable. Now, to me, the undesirable aspects of it is being forced to do that. See, I am for freedom of choice, but the reality is what a 15-minute city claims to be, that's just like if you're in the South somewhere, if you actually live in a populated area, so like in Arkansas, the only like populated areas in Arkansas, you're looking at Northwest Arkansas is like maybe 600,000 people by now, total metro. Little Rock metro area is like 750 maybe. And then you got like Fort Smith areas, I don't know, probably 200, maybe a little more. Like none of those areas meet any of the criteria of what a 15-minute city is. And they're bullshit areas, although Little Rock probably does a little bit. But even then, if you're in downtown Little Rock, you cannot get to a grocery store. Well, you can, but You can't really get to a decent grocery store without driving a car. It's theoretically possible. Well, it's possible on a bus. I know because I've done it. But so even Little Rock, I would say, doesn't even meet the standard. But if you're in like Seattle, San Francisco, proper cities, and we can laugh and joke about all the problems Portland, Seattle, and New York City, Philadelphia, but these are proper cities in that regard. Seems to me. Although I probably need to brush up on I'm sort of assuming that I know what they mean by 15-minute city. But to me, you're just talking about a proper large city. Like, there's a lot of advantages to that. So I don't really identify with this. So many Americans just rejecting the notion of a large city out of hand. I don't. In this, I can understand preferring to live in a less populated area. I do understand that, but I don't see that as just innately superior. Like, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. In my view, it's not. I don't see one as clearly better than the other. And a lot of weird shit happens in small towns, and it's not safe like people want to portray it. Just like a city's not just off the charts dangerous like they're portrayed necessarily, right? And then there's, everything in between, and there's certainly exceptions both ways. And then there's an ebb and a flow over time, right? Like, Austin, Texas used to be statistically one of the safest large cities in the country, and now it's, from what I can tell, the violent crime has skyrocketed there. Well, in fact, I myself had somebody shot my car up in Austin, Texas. I know it sounds nuts, but it really fucking happened. Believe me, I'm as astonished as the rest of you that happened. But it did. Yeah. And some people are just country folk, and that's great. I love country folk. Some people are born into that life, and that becomes their identity, and that's what they're going to live, and God bless them. But that doesn't make city living bad or undesirable just because somebody's born in the country. And vice versa, by the way, because, I understand that, people from Manhattan, they just look down on, country folk and people from the South, people like me, even though I did grow up in a city, a very small city, but I'm not country folk, even though I may sound like it at times. But, and that's where I'm just so confused by, especially Southerners believing that Donald Trump loves them and cares about them. The reality is, people from Manhattan look down on country folk, look down on Southerners. We're simple-minded bumpkins to them. We're literal hillbillies to them. Like, literally. That's what they believe us to be. So this idea that Trump cares about people and Trump came from a culture that considers all these small town folks and country folk to be beneath him. Like, that just doesn't wash. Yeah. That's not a thing that's possible. And I know part of that, I've been to these big cities. I see how these people, I see how they react just to my accent. Especially on the West Coast. Most people just assume I'm fucking stupid because of the way I talk, like, literally, and I know I'm saying literally a lot. I'm trying to get out of that habit also, but by the way, if I'm actually intelligent, it's to my advantage if they think I'm dumb. Well, it's like, okay, now I can obviously, if I need to, I can take advantage of this, such as the popo. I can just pretend like I don't know what the fuck's going on. And because of how I come across and speak, they'll just assume, okay, this is just some bozo from Arkansas doesn't know what the hell's going on. Well, it's not your concern, Gary. Yeah, exactly. It's not your concern how they think. My thing is studying all these different cultures, and anthropologically, I've been doing this my whole life. I just never knew. I didn't know that that's what I was doing. So for me, it's interesting to recognize that I came from a certain very specific culture and then realizing that other people came from very vastly different cultures, and then being able to recognize how those people view. And the reality is, most of the population in this country is from those areas. So you're outnumbered, Gary. So that, to me, that's the relevance, is understanding on some level those people can function as your enemy, right? Especially when these are the people on some level who determine like the direction of the government and all of these things, and the corporate structures and the state, you know, and all of this. So people, especially when you hear people talk about, oh, Democrat-run cities, I'm like, what are you talking about? There's almost zero Republican-run cities. And in fact, at one point, because I love statistics, I did like an analysis of just Texas, the state of Texas, and there's not a single city in the state of Texas over about 150,000 people that the city council and the mayor and the people who run the city are Republican. It's entirely Democrats. So basically, any populated area in this country is run by Democrats. Period. And that's just how it is. That's your country that you live in. So that's, to me, that's the relevance, Gary. But yeah, I don't, that, to me, that's their problem, how they view me. But I find it interesting, all of these various juxtapositions, and being able to see things from their perspective while they don't really understand where I'm coming from. That can only ever benefit me. And plus, I used to like to go to big cities. In fact, now that the pandemic things have changed so much, and I'm just assuming that there's going to be another pandemic at some point. Like, I definitely don't want to be caught, in some big city. Now, in a big rig's a little different, because presumably I'll have, the tanks will be full of diesel, and I'll have a big rig, so I'll be able to get out of the city. It'd be pretty hard to trap me into the city in a big rig. But I think you understand what I'm saying here. Texas is going to be Democrat Oracle-like, but see, and I think the fact that you're asking that question, if you look at Texas is one of, so you got three states in the country that are the most highly populated. And by the way, Florida's catching up, but you got Texas, California, so Texas and California are both right around 30 million, and you got New York State is pretty close, right? So out of those three, only Texas is considered a red state. However, how do you get to 30 million people? You get to 30 million people because most of that 30 million lives in Houston and the greater Houston area, Dallas-Fort Worth area, and Austin area, and San Antonio, which Austin and San Antonio are in the process of growing into one area if you look at the map. So with these dynamics at play, we then realize when you take those largely populated areas, those are all Democrat. So if you look at Arkansas, it's one of the most red states there is. But the areas where most of the people live, or not most of the people, but the areas with the most population density in the state, it's all Democrat, meaning Little Rock and Northwest Arkansas. That's who runs those areas. But then, Arkansas has an advantage in that it's so rural that it has enough people. So same thing with Texas. There's enough small cities, of like 100,000 people. That's a small city in Texas. There's a ton of places in Texas that are like 100,000 people, right? And those are the areas that are Republican or red, because those are the people who don't want to live in big cities. So almost exclusively people that live in larger populated areas, they are blue. They are Democrat, period. So when you keep hearing people say, oh, Democrat-run cities, it's like, no, almost all cities are Democrat-run. There's almost no Republican cities. But if you look at Texas, there's some. But it's places like Amarillo. What's 150,000 people? Who cares? The state's 30 million. Does it fucking matter that Amarillo's red and it's 150? Nobody lives there, effectively. Oh, we've got trying to think of, Tyler, Texas. maybe it's red. How many people live there? 175,000? I'm just coming off the top of my head. I don't exactly know, but there's tons of these places in Texas. So I actually did an analysis, and basically everything above 150,000 in the entire state of Texas is run by Democrats, based on their policies and based on how the city council and the mayor identify as Republican or Democrat, and then the actual policies being enacted by because sometimes you've got people claiming to be Republican and then they're actually enacting policies that are considered liberal or left-leaning or Democrat. Because just because somebody has an R next to their name doesn't mean they actually do things that we consider to be conservative. And like I've talked about, there's not a single conservative in the federal government, not one. So that's not a thing that exists. If you look at what these people actually do, that's not a thing. And it's also why I say there's nothing wrong with actual liberals, meaning like a Bill Maher, who's literally owns a part of a baseball team. He's a partial owner of the Dodgers, and he's a gun owner, and he's a proponent of gun rights. The only thing he really is real lefty on is abortion. But then he's socially liberal. Well, guess what? So are most people who think they're conservative, traditional family values. If you just go and ask them, most of them are also socially liberal. And meanwhile, just go out in public somewhere in an area that you think is conservative. Just go to a Walmart and just stand outside the Walmart and just say basic shit like, hey, because I've done this. Just say things like, hey, the best way to raise a child is in a home with a father born a man and a mother born a woman, and just shut up and watch people lose their fucking minds. But these people believe they're conservatives, a lot of them, and they will push back on you. And then they go to churches where the youth pastor is barely in the closet, because nationwide, especially Baptist churches, you go to a Baptist church in this country, the youth pastor's gay. Period. 9 out of 10 times, that's a homo, right? It's effectively fully, homosexuality is de facto fully accepted in Christian churches in America. Okay, with some exceptions. You go to like a Pentecostal church or something, one of them type of, they're a little more hardcore with especially if you get to one where the women are in the long denim skirts and the long hair and the no makeup, right? But this is what it is, I didn't make it this way. I can only function based on facing reality, right? And thank God I'm from a shitty state, because here's what it means to be from Arkansas is every single time someone brings up some little town in Arkansas, I've never heard of it, because it's like, if you look at the map of Arkansas, it's like 10,000 little towns. It's like, well, I can't be familiar with 10,000 towns of 500 people. It's not possible. But it's a great blessing, that's a thing that exists, right? Because and I've talked about this before, if you look at where these Californians are moving to, they're not moving to Arkansas, although some are, right? But most of them are moving to places like Florida or maybe even South Carolina, or Texas, obviously. But like Arkansas, places like Arkansas or even Tennessee outside of Nashville, dude, the culture is just too much culture shock. That's just a bridge too far. And, I have a great advantage being from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, that I grew up more or less in Memphis, Tennessee, culturally. It's pretty much the same culture. So I can go live in Memphis, Tennessee if I want to. So I can get the benefits of city living to some extent, but I can, believe it or not, I can rent a room in like a rooming house in Memphis, Tennessee for like 120, maybe even less. If I really want to live in the hood, I can rent a room for like $100. I saw one for like $85. I lived in a place in Fort Smith, Arkansas. This was like over 10 years ago, $65 a week, but it literally wasn't air conditioned, and it gets hot as fuck in Fort Smith in the summer, like hot as fuck. And then eventually they went to window because the electrics, the electrics in the house were so outdated it couldn't support like all these window units. Eventually they were forced to upgrade the electrics, so such that eventually they were able, you could more or less buy your own window unit. But so if I want a decent rooming house and $150 a week, that's with all utilities paid. And I'm a guy by myself with no kids, and I don't need much. And if I'm trying to live in one location, I'm probably working, or I'll be playing poker or whatever, or I'll be live streaming. Although at that point I would have to find probably have to find a separate place to live stream because my loud ass voice, I'm going to disturb the neighbors. But the point I'm making is, like, somebody can't just leave California and go move to Memphis or move to some because there's some decent, halfway decent shit towns in Arkansas, like Camden, Arkansas. Yeah, it's got a lot of crime, but it's, for a smaller area, it's a halfway decent place, right? It's not Pine Bluff where I'm from. It's just a complete and total shithole. Like, there's some decent places in the South, in the Delta area, which Camden's not technically in the Delta, but there's places like that. But dude, it's just so culturally different than what a lot of folks are used to. It's just a bridge too far, man. Because I've seen some of these 20-year-olds. I've talked about it before on this Caleb Hammer channel. There was a guy talking about, because he's one of these people in the middle in California where he's not super wealthy and he's not willing to live in the streets with nothing. So he's a young professional with a decent income, but he can't really afford to live in California. So now he's looking at moving, and he's saying he keeps hearing things about Tennessee. But because I know Tennessee, I'm like, well, no, it's not Tennessee, brother. It's Nashville. Because Nashville he could move to, and it's a city, and culturally it would make sense, right? But he can't just move to fucking bumfuck Tennessee. It's culturally, it's a bridge too far. And I've driven my personal vehicle all over these back roads of Tennessee, and just because I like to drive, and when I'm not truck driving, especially when I'm not proud of it, but when I was drinking heavy, part of what I was doing is I just was driving around and just sleeping in my car at night, drinking all day. It is what it is. I'm not proud of it, but whatever. Anyway, judge me if you want. Thank God nothing bad happened. But so the fact is, somebody can move to a small town and work remotely, but they're going to have there's no social outlets for them, right? The locals aren't going to want anything to do with them. And if you're in a little town that has like a Dollar General, maybe a McDonald's, and like a gas station, like when I go to the local gas station, it's just, if I buy a house in the area and I go to the local gas station, well, it's just like if I'm passing through there and I just happen to have it, if I have a 5-minute chit chat with one of the locals, if I'm just like, yeah, man, I just moved in, and oh, where are you from? California. And the attitude of these, and Gary Baxter, I think, can back me up, is the attitude of these rural people is like, well, there you go, and they just move on with their day. It's neither here nor there to them. They don't care. It's like, yeah, just leave, and I think, I can't speak for Gary, but it's just kind of an element of, okay, well, I got my property, and if anybody comes on my property, they're probably getting shot. So, and if, we believe in America, so yeah, come here from California, buy your property, but I probably ain't gonna have nothing to do with you anyway. But if that Californian attends the local church for a year straight, maybe over a period of years, they can work themselves into the community. Meanwhile, I've got an uncle born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, who grew up in the city limits of Pine Bluff, Arkansas, then moved out into the county. And he said, man, I've lived in the country, and for 30 years, he said, these people will never fully accept me because as far as they're concerned, I'm from the city. He said, meanwhile, I'm from the area. So imagine coming from California and moving to one of those areas. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't think people from those areas have any concept of the mentality of these small town folks. And God, by the way, God bless them. I'm not putting them down. I'm saying until somebody spends time with the small town folks and really gets to know them and the way they think, you know, it's just, it's that bless your heart thing on that a Southerner is just like, well, bless your heart. It's almost, that's like the way in which the person from Manhattan looks down on a Southerner or a hillbilly. Like that's the same version of that is, when these Californians come with all their newfangled ideas, it's like, well, bless your heart, like we don't want nothing to do with that. But then you got, your few pseudo intellectuals like Benton and like my uncle, by the way. My uncle's also a pseudo intellectual. He's got a lot of knowledge of some of the topics I talk about, So of course he doesn't fit in the country. Meanwhile, the dude's lived there for 30 years and talks like I talk, has the same fucking accent I have, right? So to the outside, to the outsider, he would seem like he fits in. The guy, lives in the country, has his own property, goes fishing, right? Loves to go fishing, and he's an outdoorsman to some extent. Works on his own, fixes his own fucking small machinery and all of this. Knows how to build shit, has fucking real world skills, and he doesn't even fit in the country. I mean, think about that. So this is what I mean about the anthropology. I find it, I'll never not be fascinated by these dynamics. So, as much as I would like to go to Europe and all these other places, I don't even need to leave America. There's so many distinct cultures in this country that I really don't even need to leave America to have these experiences that I've had. I love this place, and I'm not leaving, man, at this point. Probably not. I would love to go to. I would love to spend half the year in Mexico, but I don't have the brain to learn Spanish. I just don't want to be somewhere for 6 months out of the year where I don't really know what people are saying. Although I can pick up some of it here and there. I could learn to read and write it, I think, way easier than I could learn to just something. I just don't pick up the audio cues well enough. Just the way my brain works. What's up? What's up, Mr. McLovin? Good to see you, sir. Oh, did I just miss my exit? No, I almost missed my exit, but not quite yet. Well, yeah, that's the thing is that, and that's what I'm talking about, like with Portland. I love the city of Portland, but those people have gone full communist, and we've seen it more. It's like, and that's when I talk about that America is fully communist, and I say that it's mostly covert. It's mostly below the surface. Well, these areas like Portland that are proud of being communist. So what we saw during the fake pandemic, and especially with the BLM stuff, is we saw, rioting, although I know a lot of it was psyops and federal agents and all of this, but, we saw, I think it was like 3 straight months of literal riots in Portland. And then we saw BLM marching through the streets of Portland, and the locals actually left their homes and cheered it on. So and I've spent a ton of time in Portland, which it is a great city on a lot of levels. It really is, or it used to be. But a bulk of the people who live in Portland are literal commies, and they know they're commies, and they are proud of it, right? And meanwhile, I'm for actual freedom, and whether we like it or not. And this is why I say that all this MAGA, traditional family values, mom and apple pie, American exceptionalism, it is mind control and programming on some level. And I say that because, and then the actual form of government, the way that America was founded, the Constitution, freedom of religion, and all these things. The reality is, communism is legal in America as long as the people choose it, right? So if somebody wants to start a communist party in America, and I'm sure there is a communist party, there used to be a, Communist Party USA. So when Colin Kaepernick tweets out something about Angela Davis, being one of his heroes, the reality is she was, and I'm sure that's a psyop, and she's a government agent on some level, I'm sure, but, She was or is a member of CPUSA, Communist Party USA. And people just laugh about it. The thing is, a person who is Republican or traditional family values or MAGA, they just laugh because to them it sounds ridiculous, the idea of an American being a communist. But it's like, wait a minute, have we forgotten about McCarthyism? The Red Scare of the 1950s? Like, that was the real thing, right? Although that was also a psyop, or a series of psyops, I'm sure. So, and I don't think your average MAGA type nowadays, I don't think if I say McCarthyism to them, I don't think they know what that means. So, what chance do those people have at fighting communism if they don't even know what McCarthyism was, if they don't know who Saul Alinsky is or was, if they're not familiar with these ideas? I just don't understand. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Yeah. Well, that's why I say it's mind control. It is indoctrination. It's promoted as, well, Americans, it's such a wonderful country because of the founding fathers, gave the people all of these things. And then the people were such great people. And then so they formed the government, and then, America became this industrial power and became very affluent in a relatively short period of time because Americans chose the nuclear family, chose Christianity, chose law and order. I don't believe that's the case. I believe Americans behaved in those ways because that was what was programmed into them by the whatever was running the show, the so-called elites, the powers that be, through the Edward Bernays and, what EBT was talking about in his video, supposedly exposing Paul's dad or whatever, things like the Stanford prison experiments and all of these things. And then, so the people who have studied psychology to the point of being able to, program people, and that we know that humans are suggestible in many ways. And we also know, especially coming out of a fake pandemic, that people were subjected to this deep forms of trauma, and still are to some extent, but that the spiritual attacks and the trauma, this system knows. And you get into these ideas where Hillary Clinton or Rahm Emanuel just openly say, well, they never want to let a good crisis go to waste. So these people want to take advantage of the programmability and the suggestibility of the masses, right? So, of course, the already mind control masses, it just goes deeper. So can you really blame these people for accepting all this COVID nonsense? Like, can you really blame them? I can't really blame them, as much as I would like to. And then you have people like myself who, because of my dealings with mind control at the level of, the Jehovah's Witness cult, and, I went through this long process of deprogramming, and that I've understood, suppression and repression at a very visceral level, so that I've been in a space for years now where I'm no longer willing to suppress or repress. So, the ways in which I interface with this pandemic, which rang a lot of my bells at the levels of, if autism is a thing and if I'm undiagnosed autistic, right? All the stresses and trauma I was subjected to, but not being willing to suppress it. So then processing it, and then almost drinking myself to death because I no longer wanted to be here, right? But then, for whatever reason, that wasn't able to destroy me. And so here I am, uniquely suited to speak on these things, right? Bear with me one moment. I've become the flow of traffic. These people around me haven't realized that we've now exited the construction zone. it's time to speed up to just normal speeds. But if I just speed up to normal speeds, I'll just be in a group of cars forever when it's Sunday and there's really not a lot of traffic. So I'd rather just kind of have my own space and do my own thing. But these people they're no longer processing data, folks. They're just not. And something else that has become painfully aware during the fake pandemic. These people are gone. They're not coming back. They're just nobody's home. The light's on and nobody's home. And that's just, might as well accept it. Don't want to accept it. It sucks to accept it. Might as well accept it. I think the individual, as painful as it is, individually, you folks will be better off if you just choose to accept this thing, in my opinion. Well, and then the reality is collectively, our psychologies are a product of this system. Just look at the thumbnail for the stream, full moon blood here, right? Like what I'm talking about, and I understand it's an abstract concept, but that's what I'm talking about on some level. Is like, we're born into this system that it's lied to me from day one and told me that thing, whatever that is in the sky, it's something other than what it really is, Like, what the fuck is going on? Well, and the mask thing, that goes so deep. I mean, I could just talk for the rest of the day just about the psychology around the mask. Like, just there, I've noticed many things about the psychology of the mask that I don't point. Well, thanks, Oracle Light. And see, this is, by the way, when I talk about my podcast, we can talk about, Chalk Body Outline and Drew World Order and, Paul Enslaved and all these different broadcasts. My podcast, and I've got screenshots of all this somewhere. Eventually, I'll go dig up these old laptops and show you these screenshots. But, every one of my podcast episodes had a lot of views for my audio only podcast. And this is why. It's because I was one of the few people talking about these topics while the shit was happening from day one. And then furthermore, YouTube was not allowing people to talk about these issues, but I was on my own website on a podcast, an uncensored podcast, talking about these issues in real time. And that's why people flock to my podcast. And now it seems like YouTube on, at least on a live stream, YouTube is allowing people to talk about these things again. Well, thanks, Oracle Light. But here's the thing to realize about how I break things down. I have to break things down for myself in order to maintain my sanity. So I like to talk about that I don't have to do anything but live and die, and that's true. But in order for me to function in society and not go literally insane, I have to break things down for myself. And meanwhile, I've had an advantage of just being able to have a lot of time to myself. Because what defense does your average person who's just trying to raise their kids and is getting squeezed economically and has to, both spouses both parents are having to work multiple jobs to some extent, and the stress of the credit card debt and all of these things, it's a fucking nightmare. So I have a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy for people, at various levels, based on all these things, because I get it, even though I'm not experiencing it. Like, I do understand to some extent, just what these folks are dealing. So I do give them a lot of leeway at the level of it's easy for me to understand why these folks are really not able to they just don't have defenses to these things psychologically. There's just not they're under too much stress and trauma. So such that they are suggestible and they are programmable. It's just, it is what it is. There's not a lot I can do about it. Thank you. Yeah, that's true, Gary. Yeah. Yeah, that is. I am very analytical by nature, although it was not always a good thing. And part of whatever my spiritual path has been, or my various practices, part in meditation and all of these things, part of that was me figuring out how to cope with the circus that was going on in my mind 24 hours a day. Because when I was closely identified with all of these analytical processes and me having the hypervigilance and, noticing all these things that seemingly other people were not noticing, there's a lot of, certainly a lot of anxiety around those dealing with that. But fortunately, I've been able to detach myself from those processes to a great extent. Fortunately. Well, I may have to wrap up. It's time to eat a meal. We'll see. Parked on the side of the road here. May take up 10 or 15 here and wrap up. Yep. Well, we're probably almost done, Oracle Light. Yeah, there you go, Terry Miller. Yeah, man. It's and that's the human. The thing is, when I talk about that, if Satan is a discrete being, whether whatever this force of evil is, whatever that thing is, as far as I'm concerned, is the world's or the realm's foremost expert in our psychology. And what is one of the major functions of the human, individually is, a human adapts to its environment very, very effectively, very efficiently. And I think it's beyond question that the forces that be, the administrators that are serving that evil force, our own nature's being used against us at that level, so that when at an individual level, when we are traumatized, our reaction to that is we adapt to the trauma very effectively and very efficiently. And some of that is through this repression, right? And then also the mind control operates, based on dissociation. And I and many other people have a high, ability for dissociation. And if anybody's interested in these topics, it's not a very well written book, but how the Illuminati create an undetectable mind control slave by and I used to have a hard copy of the book, but it is available on a PDF. You can just Google it and you should be able to find the PDF by, I believe it's Fritz Springmeier or Fitz or Fritz, I forget, but excellent information in that book. So if that's a thing, that a lot of this has been done in the past, actual literal human programming. But then, of course, when it's, when each individual has to be programmed, by an expert programmer, that's a lot of man hours. So of course the efforts are going to be directed towards children who have the highest capacity for dissociation. So the fact that I grew up in a mind control cult, it's certain. And by the way, I don't remember most of my childhood. Most of my childhood I have no memory of. And that seems to be something that a lot of these people who've been, under mind control or, trauma-based mind control or satanic ritual abuse or, all of these things. It seems like a lot of these highly traumatized individuals, a lot of them I don't remember much of my childhood. I really don't. And so is it possible that I grew up in an organization where all the children were subjected to this trauma? The religion itself was traumatic to the children. And then is it possible that the organization is structured in such a way that the leadership knows to look for certain things in the children and then identifies, okay, here are the kids who have the most ability for dissociation, and then are those kids separately further programmed? And I've observed that the Jehovah's Witness organization is fully integrated into the beast system. I don't think that's debatable. And I think we've further seen that borne out through the, the fake pandemic. So, and I can tell you from my own experiences, because I had a lot of anger towards the organization. And when I was living in the streets with nothing, there were times when I would see the Jehovah's Witnesses out in public, and I would become very angry and aggressive, especially if they approach me, right? And if the police happen to show up or be in the area, I can tell you that the powers that be fully protect the Jehovah's Witnesses. They're fully supported and protected by the authorities. And the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society of Pennsylvania, it seems to me, is fully, just fully enmeshed in this system. So it certainly seems plausible to me that this organization identified me as someone who would have been even more programmable than normal. And then, so who even knows what code they put in my brain? So it's like when people talk about me being a Fed or an agent, it's like, yeah, maybe I am, but how the fuck would I know? For all I know, it's, all this stuff's been embedded in my psyche and I'm not even aware of it. Like, who even fucking knows? It's just scary to think about, right? I don't know. It's interesting, though, certainly, to be sure. You tell me. Yeah, finance for, exactly, Crumley. Yeah, finance for 96 months. And then I recommend this channel called Caleb Hammer. He does these financial audits where he sits these people down and goes through their finances. And dude, it's appalling the way people view finances in this country. Like, dude, it's shocking. Shocking. And I do realize that the audience for these broadcasts skews very fiscally conservative and in a good way. Like, a lot of you really do practice what you preach at the level of your own finances, and God bless you, And I'm that way as well, by the way. That's probably where I fit in the most with you is I'm very conservative with my finances to some extent, although, I don't really own property or whatever, but, I don't really have debt. I'm able to save money and, I'm very frugal. Yeah, that's right. I do have that pedantic nature. You're right. You're right, Gary. Yeah, Kaczynski. Yeah, exactly. The concept of mental health in our society is defined largely by the extent to which an individual behaves in accord with the needs of the system and does so without exactly. And that's where you get into the without showing signs of stress. And this is where Yurt has reminded me of it's not the 1980 because see my fear is more of the 1984 version. That's what triggers my fear response is this, actually being seized and interrogated and and tortured and put into a gulag, an actual prison camp, an overt prison camp, 1984 style. But the reality is what we now have is it's more of a Brave New World Huxley versus it's Soma. Your average American is now popping pills. That's Soma, man. So that's how they're able to function in society without showing those signs of stress is, well, here's the Xanax, here's the, whatever they're on. I don't even know what it's called anymore. But, here's the Ambien. And, I watch a lot of these people who get caught for drunk driving. And a lot of these folks, that ain't alcohol. That's alcohol plus Ambien plus Xanax plus God knows what else. Like some of these people, every once in a while, it's just some really fucking drunk person. But if you observe these people's behavior, a lot of those folks, that's not alcohol. That alcohol is in the mix, but that ain't alcohol. That's alcohol plus God knows what else. Adderall, Abilify. How many Americans are now on Adderall, which is, strong amphetamine, a literal antipsychotic, something like Abilify. Then you get into the SSRIs, Prozac type drugs. Then you get into the benzos, Xanax type drugs, and pain meds, by the way, and opiates, and alcohol. That's 6 different things. How many million Americans are on those 6 drugs? Dude, it's got to be tens. How could it not be tens of millions? Like it has to be. Yeah, indeed, Ted was right. Good to see you, Ginger Ridge. Yeah, there you go. Gary Baxter, if I'm made to eat bugs, I will not be happy. I ain't eating no fucking bugs. And meanwhile, I don't care what people put in their bodies, but or I should say that's not my concern. However, I'm certainly going to observe and report back, right? I'm going to observe and report back my findings, and then I'm going to extrapolate and draw sorts of conclusions. You know, yeah, oh yeah, it's you know, prescription drug nation. And I'm not on anything, you know. Left to my own devices, but in the past I was on alcohol, and I'm not even on that anymore. You know, thank God I'm not able to be. And then, you know, cannabis. Although I've chosen an industry where I'm not really allowed to do cannabis for the most part, if I between jobs for long enough. But you know, and psychedelics every once in a while. But unless I grow them myself, it's damn near impossible for me to fluke up on some mushrooms. So anyway, it is what it is. But I'm gonna get out of here, eat a meal, and get the rest of my day underway. Thanks for watching. Bye.